Welcome to Dads and Dollars podcast with your host, Stanley Funches, certified financial planner, business owner, author, speaker, and father of three. Listen as Stanley shares his valuable insights around fatherhood and finances gained from over 20 plus years of experience. You'll hear stories, lessons learned, and the ups and downs he and his guests have encountered on their journeys as fathers, professionals, and business owners. These shared lessons will help provide you a path for financial independence while celebrating the challenges of being a dad. Thank you for joining the conversation. Here's your host, Stanley Funches.
Good day. Welcome to Dads and Dollars, the podcast where fatherhood and finances are woven into many life topics. My name is Stanley Funches. I'm a certified financial planner by profession and a father of three in this thing called life. We are glad you can join us for season 1, episode 17. And in this episode, I have two of my favorite business colleagues and friends joining us to talk about fatherhood, finance, business, and relationships. So buckle in, get ready for a great conversation. And so let's do this. All right, so we want to welcome to the show today, Robert Henry and Scotty Harris. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, hey, I want you guys to take a little time and give an introduction to yourself, where you're from, and tell us a little bit about your family. So I'll start with you first, Scotty.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, y'all. And if the podcast happens to take place later, good afternoon, good midday, good night, wherever respectively it applies. My name is Scotty Harris. I am in Charlotte, North Carolina, hoping today to see the Cowboys get knocked off. I'll go ahead and put that in the atmosphere if anybody out there is a Cowboys fan. I am a single father of one male child, Noah. And when I'm not helping other people like myself try to get better or do better as they help me, I am either coaching, driving, chauffeuring, being valet to, equipment manager for, chef, or whatever else for my son as he pursues his quarterback dreams here at our high school in Charlotte. I'm originally from Durham, North Carolina, which is known as the Black Wall Street in the United States. So we share a pretty rich history within the culture of the fabric of the African-American community. And I'm very glad that, Stanley, you allowed me the time to spend with you today.
Oh, man, that's awesome, man. Look, Noah's life is your life right now, right?
You got it.
Or your life is his life. That's a better way to put it. All right, Robert.
Thanks, Stanley. Thank you for having me again. Good morning, everyone. My name is Robert Henry. I've been married for 22 years to the same woman. We met in the military. We have two wonderful boys. My oldest is 20. He's out doing his tech thing, and my youngest is 18, about to be 19 in May, and he's doing his second semester as a freshman at the University of South Carolina. So that's all in itself great. And currently empty nesters and enjoying life. When I'm not doing that, we're out eating, having a good time, and enjoying each other. So thank you for having me.
Hey, man, look, we were just talking about that, life goals, man, being an empty nester. You getting to that point, man. You look, it's a dream. You're a young man. You're an empty nester. Man. You got the successful kids behind you. Well, God bless you, brother.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Talk about retirement. I mean, that's real retirement right there.
Right.
That is.
Shoot. So
there's levels to this thing.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I wanted you guys to be on the show today because when we are together in the business environment and we're at conferences and meetings and things like that, we have some of the best conversations that can last, most of the evening and mostly in the morning, where we're sitting around, we're talking about not necessarily business things. We're talking about being fathers, being men, growing up in our skin, and the great parts of it and the challenges of it, and it's some great bonding. So today, I just want us to kind of sit down, talk, and the audience, people who love Dads and Dollars, always want to kind of learn from our experiences. We're an experience podcast, so we're talking from, again, a male perspective of how do we deal with the great parts of being a dad and as well as the challenges. So we're just gonna have a great conversation, and I appreciate you guys joining us. So one of the things that we always kind of talk about is this relationship that we have in the corporate environment, kind of piggybacking what I just said, is the connection and synergy that we have just by when we have these meetings and the power of what we collaborate and share together. So tell me a little bit about, how those experiences help you, benefit you in both business and family.
Yeah. Either or Robert, if you want to lead, I'll be happy to either or.
No, I may not have as much corporate experience as you guys, but it is a breath of fresh air. I've been in a corporate environment to where there were people like myself in higher leadership, and I kind of gravitated to them to ask for guidance and how to navigate in certain spaces. And they shunned me. They didn't pay that much attention to me. I don't know, from their perspective, it was like, I'm here and I just don't want to see that I'm helping just people like me. But they would turn around and help people of different of a different look, right? And it didn't feel good. I didn't understand it at that time, but really being in the environment now that we're in, and when I see you, Scotty, in the building or at a conference, I see you and the others that we meet and we fellowship with. It's a difference, and it's good because I've learned so much from not just you two, but from the others as well. Everybody have a different walk in life, and you guys sharing that in those conversations, whether it was personal, whether it was professional, has really helped develop me in different ways as well, that sometimes I cannot get that at work because some people just can't relate and be on that same level.
And I'll kind of chime in. My experience is a little different. I went to a historically Black college. So I went to North Carolina Central University, the MEAC champions and the national HBCU champions of this year. So I was always in an environment where, whether it was staff, whether it were classmates, whether it were alumni, it was a family. And going out into corporate America required me, in many cases, as we like to refer to it in some cases, as code switching, which is the duality of being able to exist in both environments, retaining those things that keep me who I am and give me the genuineness in my community, but yet still allow me to be able to work with people unlike myself. And it forced me into an environment of understanding culture that I had never been exposed to before. I can remember I was working for a company in 1998, and I didn't realize that in corporate America, they did not use the word problem. It was issue. You couldn't use the word problem, or you couldn't say that you were upset with someone, or there was this whole labyrinth of being able to talk to people that I had to begin to learn the language and the culture of. I was used to a very direct life. And like you said, Robert, you're trying to learn these things from individuals who may not want to see you succeed. It could be individuals that do want to see you succeed, but they're afraid of the consequences of helping you. And the more I began to listen and learn, I realized that it's a struggle. It's a struggle to retain who you are, yet work in an environment that, again, the industry that we're in we're not a commonality. You mentioned the conferences. We are the few and far between at a lot of these conferences. Thousands and thousands of individuals, yet few that look like us. And so these sidebar conversations become valuable to us because, man, after talking for 8 hours to somebody who shares absolutely nothing with you, you talk to a Stanley, or you talk to a Calvin, or you talk to somebody who, the big mama grew up in South Carolina, or, their son is at your school, and there's that connectivity that I think we all need and we exist off of.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, I think that's cool because, when we're in this finance industry dealing with dollars and cents and everything, when we can relate to somebody through experiences like, okay, fatherhood. We talk about our kids and we talk about raising our kids. We can relate about the challenges that we may have experienced growing up. I know, Scotty, we talk about our childhood a lot, and those are commonality things that fit our culture And I know, Robert, we've talked about our dads and how we grew up and how we grew up differently. And so those commonality things that we talk about has nothing to do with finance, but it helps our relationship as we continue to move forward and figure out, okay, how can we do business together better? But we know each other. We know where we're coming from.
Right.
It's a whole lot. It's a whole lot different. Scotty, you always talk about black faces and white places, and how to, what would be some of the ways that we can do proactively to solve that? I think you and I and Robert, I think we talked about connection and synergy versus competition. So can you guys speak to that? What's your thoughts on those?
Absolutely. I think it goes back to, we have to it's not always about where we are, but who we can open a door for or create opportunities for those that are coming after us. If we only get one person in a position and that one person does absolutely nothing to help somebody else get in the door or to create a segue, when that door closes behind that one person, oftentimes that's it. So what you try to look for, I think we as a group or a collective attempt to look for, in some cases, those of us that want to see us progress as a people, is what role can I play to keep that going? I work with students at a historically Black college and university here in Charlotte, Johnson C. Smith University. I'm tied to HBCU life, no matter where I go, whether it's at A&T, whether it's at Winston-Salem State. I believe in that because that when white universities would not accept us, would not take us, didn't want us, these were the universities that created your professors. These were the universities that created your scientists. These were the universities that created your ministers, your politicians. So if we let that die out, we don't have that segue of those qualified candidates that they are looking for in these corporate jobs. And we started young as there and try to work with them through mentorship and then getting them an understanding of how to get into these corporate roles. For our colleagues and counterparts, you mentioned it not being competition, but a synergy and a collaboration. It's a goal, I think. In some cases, Rob and I, we've been to meetings, or I've been to meetings, and someone has brought up, hey, our goal is just to get a little more time off where we're not, where we aren't stressed about that requested time off. And I think that that's a small ask. That's not a big picture ask. I think a big picture ask is something we did a few years ago, which was beginning to have the conversation around how do you get individuals that look like yourself into leadership roles. Stanley, you and I have talked about that, or officer roles in some organizations, because then you get a different mindset, you get a different perspective. And if those individuals do well in that role, again, it opens opportunity for your son, Stanley, or your son, Robert, to potentially have an opportunity like that. And then one day be able to even hire my son. So the collaboration that comes, in some cases, I've seen it at a cost. There is a cost to doing it. Nothing in life is free. The cost sometimes is your sacrifice. You have to watch somebody else get promoted over you. We've seen that happen. You may have to sacrifice your time working with this person. Not everybody is at the same place that you are in your career or in your journey. You may have to teach them everything from what type of suit to wear. That's one of the basic key things. You work, hey, brother, I love you, but you can't wear that Gucci suit to your job interview. Wear a dark suit. I know you got those Coach shoes or those fedoras, hats, and all. Unacceptable in an environment where one, as a Black male or a Black female, you're already having to compete, in some cases, 3-5 steps behind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I didn't mention this in the intro, but I'm born from Brooklyn, New York. And being in that environment back in the early 80s, I was already counted out, right? So me being in the leadership position that I'm in now, to where I can make the hiring decisions, I'm always trying to make sure I'm opening that door. A lot of people don't know. They have goals and aspirations. I want to be in the corporate life. I want to do this and do that. And to Scotty's point, they don't know how to navigate once they get into that environment, right? if you see Robert Henry in the street, this is what you see. I'm me, I'm myself. But I think Scotty mentioned it before. It's about code switching, right? And how you carry yourself once you're inside the doors. And that's how I try to relate to people, especially these young kids in college. They come in and they have this idea. They coming in with the Gucci shoes, and you got to pull them to the side and talk to them and say, hey, you can be yourself, but you do have to you don't have to change who you are, but you do have to adapt where you at, right? So I always try to make sure I'm extending that hand, that opportunity to the young college professionals, give them that opportunity, and not only just give them the opportunity and leave them out the job, but really guide them and give them the do's and the don'ts and how to talk and knowing when to talk, right? And knowing how to control those emotions, because not everything's going to go our way. And you can't act like you're at home when something don't go your way and you go off the top and be rude, disrespectful, and saying whatever comes to mind, right? You have to be able to control that and know how to, facilitate that conversation in a more positive and professional way. So that's how I try to kind of extend that bridge, if you will.
Real quick, Stanley and Robert, as we talk about this, and Robert, you mentioned what you see in the street, that's who you are. And then when we go behind the doors of the job, I think it goes a little bit further than that, because who we are even away from work is who we are judged for, or who we are thought to be. Even when if we're at an off work event, we're still, and that's what I try to get young brothers and sisters to understand is that clock doesn't stop. Yeah. You may have left the office, but the perception of who you are. I remember learning that where just the perception, even if you are not the angry black man, if you were perceived to be the angry black man, that can become your reputation, that can become how you're handled. If you're perceived to be docile. And so I think it goes to us having to, instill that that I tell Noah all the time, and he let's say, hey man, you never know where there's a coach, you never know where there's a recruiter, you never know who's looking at you or watching you. So if you want that to translate into your work life, it actually transcends, to me, past the office doors. Because what someone sees from you when you're at the movie theater, or what their perception, I've run into people from the office all the time in different places, and what they perceive of you becomes the reality. So if they see you in the office, but then when they see you away from the office, you gangster, and their perception is like, wow, and it's unfortunate, because again, it goes back to how do you retain who you are? Right. Yet, like you said, navigate, function in this other world. How do you get up? One of the things is coming to work in your own skin. Is there ever one person that really, and Stanley, you can do this to a certain degree, but when you're employed by a company, do we ever get the opportunity to really come to work in our full skin?
No. I mean, you don't. I think that's the challenge, right? I mean, that's the challenge, because culturally, there's very little power and influence that we have within the corporate, quote unquote, corporate industry, right? Mm-hmm. So our culture is not ingrained in the corporate industry, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. I mean, so yeah, how I grew up in the South, not knowing much about finances, I can't necessarily bring that to the table when it comes to some financial conference, industry meeting, or whatever. I have to bring what I've learned and picked up along the way through my travels through Tulane University, business jobs. Okay, I got to bring that to the table, but that's not who I am. I'm this little country boy from Mississippi, and who just just enjoyed whatever the simple parts of life. And so, so would you have to bring that that level of things you picked up along the way? And I think the difference is that the people where the corporate culture is their culture. Like we say it all the time. We see kids who have grown up where their parents have been financial advisors, and they can step right in. And it's the language, everything they understand. It's how they grew up. It's the people they grew up around. It is inbred in their culture. And we see they step in and run the practice. To my kids, this is still foreign, because even though dad is a financial advisor, when dad came home, he was still this country boy from Mississippi. And we just talked about things that were, that we just, and so they're like, hey, I know you did that at work, but that's not us. That's not who we are. And so I think that that's a challenge there.
Yeah, it remains to be. I remember growing up, there were two school systems when I was small. There was a public school system and a county school system. The public school system was a Black school system run by a Black superintendent, Black school board, and obviously the hirees, the teachers, principals in these schools, historically Black schools, were Black. So when you went to these schools, there was a sense of pride. You knew the people from your church, or you knew them from your community, and it was generational. I can remember my mother moving to the county and me having to go to a county school, and it was culture shock for not only me, but for the students there. I'm one Black male, call it 2 or 3 other Black females. I'm placing out all the testing, so I'm in all the academically gifted classes, but I have no connectivity to the students in that class. In my lunchbox, there's not 3 little pieces of crackers and cheese. There's not, I remember, there are all of these nuances that I'm having to adapt to, and I'm calling my friends, telling them, man, do you know what they do out at this school? And, they don't even, something real common. They don't even sing Silent Night the right way. They don't even know the Temptations sing Silent Night. So, that type of thing. But me, I look at other students, the couple that have already been there, that, like you said, that knew the language, that knew what the expectations were from their white classmates, that knew what the expectations were from the white teachers. And that was my early introduction into a culture unlike my own. And I can remember my mother, who she too was a single parent, after having her, going through undergraduate and graduate, her path for me was, I don't ever want you to have to work as hard as I did. And I think as a parent, we all try to see that vision for our child or whoever we're a caretaker for, whoever we love. We don't want them to have those experiences. I don't want my son, to have to deal with what I deal with those white classmates or the white teachers. I had the Malcolm X experience. Why don't you not take quantitative physical science? Why don't you just take a general science? Do you really want to go, are you sure you wouldn't rather do something in business than go to college? I had that experience with them. So I fought tooth and nail through that. And again, when you mention or we talk about that, because it's only going to be, as we talk about lifting ourselves up, no matter how we look at this thing, every now and then there are intermediaries that may come from outside of our community that help, but it's got to be germane to us. It has to be us lifting one another up, no matter what. Whether it's through your podcast, having this direct conversation, whether it's through, a Barack Obama, whomever, it has to be us lifting each other up. We don't see it, as Cal and I talk about, there's this ebb and flow. We'll have an intercessor come in, if you will, and they infuse a little help. But don't you always see a Stanley where that intercessor that was infusing help back away, and who's it left up to at that point?
Yeah.
Us.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that when you say when it's up to us, I think we start at home, right? We start at home and with our sons and daughters and how we try to teach them. Robert, I know we talk about all the time, you with your 2 sons, raising young men as a strong father today. So if we take the corporate environment, we bring it back a little bit to the home environment. kind of tell us what are your thoughts around that, as far as, especially when it comes to how we're raising them, right? The discipline part versus we had some interesting conversations about how we were disciplined and then how we wanted to maybe tweak a little things here or there. Talk about that.
It's totally crazy. We talked about this. My dad is rest in peace. He was a Vietnam vet. So you can imagine this Black man raising 2 kids in Brooklyn, New York, and really instilling discipline, right? His command was his words. He never put his hand on us because he knew if he did, it's we're gonna feel it for a while, right? So it was always that fear mentality, but it was discipline. He showed us how you go to work, you provide for your family, you raise your kids, and you instill all these principles in us from what he learned from discipline in the military. And then I followed his role, joined the military as well. So raising kids today is not the same, man. I have 2 boys, and the school that they go to is mixed. It's very mixed, right? So you have that aspect. But I was scared. And the reason why I was scared is because I did not want to be that parent that says no, 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 because we've seen that over the years, since we've been kids, it's the same kids that's been hearing, no, you can't do this, can't do that. They go out, they do it on their own, and now it's a total mess, right? So I've learned, not with the oldest, but with the youngest one, he was a little bit more sociable. My oldest is an introvert, so he'll stay at home and game all day. The youngest is an extrovert, wanted to go out and party with his friends. And these parties, when they were seniors, they had alcohol, right? So it comes to the point to where you have to decide, do you want to be a parent, that overbearing parent to say no to everything because it's not good, even though you're right, but that can have a negative impact on them in the future? Or do you want to be that parent that's partnering with your child and help them learn the do's and don'ts so they can have the information to make a right decision? And that's the road that I planned. So when he wanted to go out, even though he had his car since junior high school and those senior parties was happening, I will take you there, right? You can drink. You call me and I'll pick you up. You watch your cup. If you put your cup down and you walk away, get you another cup. And he'll come back and, Dad, I had a great time, blah, blah, blah. And yes, I was waking up, dropping them off and having to go pick them up, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, but he was safe.
Right.
And he understand the do's and don'ts. And now he in his first semester of college, he doesn't drink. Why? Because he went to those parties and he had his good time and he saw other kids go and did it the wrong way, all over the place, throwing up and all that stuff like that. Goes to campus and he see kids doing it because they didn't do it in high school because the parents say no. And it just, first semester, kid got kicked out of college because he was drinking in his dorm room, throwing up multiple times. And they said, this is not the behavior we condone. So I'm glad that I was able to, unorthodox at his best, but I was able to show him the do's and don'ts. And now he's in college at the University of South Carolina, and he knows how to carry himself because I was able to be that parent to kind of show him the do's and don'ts and not be that overbearing, don't do this, don't do that. And then you go off by yourself, first time away from mom and dad,
right,
and you just go the wrong way. So I remember telling you that, you were like, wow, really, Bob? But I mean, that's how we have to do.
I think it tells that whole thing of kind of openness. So being, and Scotty and I, we probably have some similar experience in some ways because we're from the South, right? I mean, so the South, physical discipline, discipline the hard way is kind of how, from the culture from hundreds of years ago. I mean, that's kind of how this thing was. And parents, you stayed out of grown folks' business, right? You didn't do what grown folks did. It was all those things. And so we learn about our parents, whatever they did when they were younger. We learn that later on in life because now we're adults and we feel like they can share. And we don't learn those lessons while we're a child. So it's not an openness, or it wasn't an openness in the relationship. So today, when you were telling me about, how your openness with your son and raising him, it just brought some things to light for me, like how, with my kids, right? My daughter's 23, but there were things that we like, hey, these are things that you don't do, these are things that you do, and this is how you. But we always try to empower them with decision making, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was just different. It wasn't, as they got older, we gave them more room to make their own decisions. My dad did that for me too. He said, the more I trust you, the more you show me that I can trust you, the more I'll trust you with.
Right.
Whether that's with driving a car, whether it's with, having a later curfew, you show me that I can trust you, and I will trust you with more. And that's kind of how we did with our kids too, as they were growing up. The more they showed that we could trust them, the more we did trust them. So it wasn't a hard line in the sand, like, hey, here's the rules. You don't cross this. It's not black and white.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely grew up like you, Stanley, with switch, with the belt. It was the kind of the spare the rod, spoil the child mentality. But I think that was, again, going back to that was the culture of the day. That was what was happening. As a result of that, I didn't want to physically or be punitive with my son. I tried to create a system of, the carrot and the stick. There's a reward, and then there's something punitive where I take it away from you. And for the most part, now, kind of knock on simulated wood grain, that's worked extremely well for me. Because he's a teenager now, and he's at the point where before, as the father, as a smaller child, they can listen to you. When they're an adolescent or a teen, they're now listening to, kids their age more, and that becomes a greater influence than maybe or what you got going on at home. So my biggest fear, and I don't know about you all, is that he's in a situation and he not know how to handle it. And I never want to find out that he was hurt, in jail or anything like that. So I always tell him that although, hey, there's consequences and repercussions on my end, you can always, and he knows this, you can always call your father. If you ever got pulled by the police, immediately let them know, put me on the speaker, I'm calling my father. If you have a situation where it's escalated, immediately let them know I'm calling their father. Because in some cases, I've even seen where they've assumed, the young black male doesn't have another black male to support them. And they attempt to, environments where they attempt to manipulate. What was the story? You guys remember the Central Park guy, that were accused of something they didn't do, and they were manipulated in the absence of someone to represent them. And I always want to be I'm always my son's representative. You all as you mentioned being a protector, Rob. I think that translates into me. I want to see him come home. I want to see him out of harm's way. I don't ever want to see him become a statistic where he's under the tutelage of the judicial system. It's just not happening. So that's where my discipline goes, to where we have very extensive conversations about how do you function as a black man at a concert? How do you function as a black man when you're the only guy there? How do you function as a black man when you're walking in the mall? Some things that people aren't, even the way he dresses, I have to let him know, the police can target you just by the way you dress, just by the way your hair is, just by the way that you walk. They can target you. I come from a law enforcement family, so I know this to be true. And it's unfortunate, but it does happen. So being able, again, to get them, you trusted, your father trusted you, Stanley. You created a level of trust with your kids. Robert, you created a level of trust with your kids. I'm at this adolescent stage. The trust level is very, very slow, because I'm telling you, every time that dude goes out the door, I trust him to do two things: use bad judgment and make poor decisions. Every time. And it's not because I think he's a bad kid. I think it's because because the age that they're at, they're listening to each other. They aren't using their own judgment. So when I get to your, call it another 4 years, when I can sit in your seat, Robert, or I can sit in your seat, Stanley, I'll be a little more relieved. I'll be happier. Probably won't, this may even start going black again. But where I'm at now is trying to get this guy to definitely understand, you're always in the spotlight. You're always in the spotlight for something. I even sometimes some subliminal things that come to mind, or I can walk in a room in an office, and this is a personal pet peeve I despise. But you could say, hey, is the blind, the blind might be turned, or the lights might be off. Oh, is there, are the lights on? Oh, are you starting problems? And I hate that. Or are you causing trouble? I hate that, because you don't say that to a colleague that doesn't look like you.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't say, hey, is Josh O'Harrell, are you starting problems? But Tyreek or Shakima comes in the room, and it's Shakima or and these were things I learned in the culture, and I try to teach them to my son that their perception of you becomes a reality.
Yeah.
It's how they grade you.
Yeah.
It's how they approach you. It's how they handle you. The perception that they have of you, and it's a hard road to hoe out here. As a black man in this world, just truly being honest, it is a very, very hard road to hoe, because you're consistently, walking on eggshells.
Yeah, I think that one of the things you're talking about is basically, and this came to light for a lot of Americans with what happened, the George Floyd murder, right?
Mm-hmm.
That perception and the fact that we have to have this talk with our black men, young men, and black daughters about how to navigate the complex world and what systems are in place that work against. And I think that a lot of times America may not look at these things, but it put it front and center, from Ahmaud Arbery to Breonna Taylor to George Floyd, all of those things happening while we're all in the lockdown. I think that it shed light on something that we experience every day. So it's something that, again, with our kids, we want to make sure that we talk and we teach and we do all those things. So, and one of the areas too, as you guys mentioned, the lessons we're teaching the kids, and Robert, you've been with your wife for 22 years. You guys have been together raising your kids. Me and Scotty are in different circumstances. Robert, tell us a little bit more about how you guys as a team, you and your wife, how you guys have fostered your relationship, your marriage, while raising kids, while dealing with the corporate environment.
Yeah, so 22 years, we met in the military. We was in the same unit, actually. And we both came from different backgrounds, right? I'm a kid from Brooklyn, New York, by ways of Mounts Corner, South Carolina, joined the military, playing basketball in the military. And my wife is Jamaican. So she just came over, I think, junior year, high school, graduated from Jersey and Trenton, and joined the military to make a way for herself. So you got these two kids from different worlds meeting. And ever since then, man, it's just been, we have so much in common. We enjoy each other. We both had the same goals. I knew, working in the military, working on vehicles was not it for me, right? So I wanted to be in the business office, and she wanted to do her thing and get out of logistics and find a business job as well. And that was our goal. And I shared that with her, to where I always told her I wanted to be just like my parents. I wanted to have 2 boys. And we did that. Luckily on the first 2 go-rounds, right?
You ordered 2 boys and got them, right? You like,
and got them right off.
Wow.
Right. And that's what we wanted. And we always, and I love her because, she keeps me in check. She's the more conservative one. And I like to plan ahead, but plan big. But she's like, no, we gotta do this and do that and keeps me in check. And we both come from strong, disciplined families as well. I think that's what helped us with the boys. Now, I'm saying all of this because don't get it twisted. The 22 years was not easy. We got married at the age of, I think it was 2021 maybe, and we were still in the military. Then being out of the military, you see for the first time the actual civilian world as an adult. So that presented a lot of challenges in our marriages. And but we got through it together. We got through it by talking and communicating. We got through it thanks to the Lord and praying. And it wasn't an easy 22 years, but I wouldn't change it for the world. Again, she supports me, I support her. And I think because we have so much in common and we're able to not only spend time together watching Netflix or whatever, but she also allows us to have our own space, right? Like I'm in my room right now, and she's doing something, and it could be like that for a couple hours in the house, even though it's just the two of us. But at some point, we will connect again and be like, hey, let's catch up on our shows and binge watch a couple episodes. So I think having that balance of not only being committed to each other, but also understanding that, hey, sometimes you're going to need time to yourself to do your thing and have your space. That's key, because when you can't get that space at home, you're going to try to find that space somewhere else. Yeah. And that's going to lead to other issues as well. So I think we got that great balance.
Man, I think that's what's wonderful, man, because the journey is tough, right? I mean, I tell,
it is.
When I'm sitting down with clients or I'm talking to friends, I mean, when you especially get married in your 20s and you're raising kids and you're trying to build careers and the complexity that presents itself, right? I mean, there's just a lot of complexity. Like, how do you make time for you and your partner, your spouse? I mean, how do you make time for that? And a lot of people don't do that as well as others. And so I think it's great that you guys have now gotten through probably some of the more complex times to now get to a point where you can say, hey man, we built this wonderful tree and this tree has grown and now we can pluck some fruit off the tree and just chill. Yeah. And I think that's a great thing. I know for me, that rocky road ended at 20 years, right? Because it was, I mean, it was a very good, solid marriage, but the complexity just kind of chips away. It kind of chips away till you chisels away, and then you're like, okay, there's nothing left, because you're always trying to. Well, we're type A personality, so we're always trying to achieve. You're always trying to achieve that next thing, and you're raising kids, and you're dealing with corporate environment, and you got finances as an issue. You got all those different things, and then it tends to erode the relationship. So it's wonderful that you're able to take care of that. And I would just say for people who are listening that your point about it's not easy to hang in there, prayer, working together, supporting each other. Those are all great boxes to check off and figure out how to do therapy to do all those things. Yep. That's what I would encourage anybody who's in that marriage partnership relationship and going through it right now. So Scotty, for you and I, we've had to have that transition where we're the primary custodian for our kids, and we've tried to co-parent and things of that nature. So kind of tell a little bit about what are some of the things that you would talk to the audience about? Hey, co-parenting, raising your child on your own, and also the mother's there, but also being the primary.
So I think that I actually watched The Professor yesterday, ironically enough, and this was a white woman, believe it or not, and she had done a study on statistically how much more successful a Black child is with a Black father. Not necessarily where the father is with the mother, but just with the Black father, and the changes in the outcomes of that child's life. I attest to that because in coaching, when I see the boys come, on whatever day of the week it is, and then Saturday morning, unfortunately, the number of fathers that, aren't present to be supportive of their young man. I told Noah when he started playing sports at 5, I told him, I said, as long as God is willing, I plan to never miss a game that you're in. And I only ever missed one game, and that was because of a conference, the larger conference that takes place in the summer, but I never missed a game otherwise. And The reason for this is because it's so important to me, it's so important to your child, for them to see a Black male there present. Because again, we go back to the assumption that, there is no father there that's present. I have custody of my child, and I am the primary caregiver. In your social life, Stanley, you and I know that can limit. You can't quite be Billy D when you got a 7:00 or 6:30 curfew to be at the school to pick them up from practice, or I used to tell people you can't be Rico Suave on Saturday because you don't know what that game is at 4:30 and it's running to 7:30 and they running late, But the exchange and what you're giving to your child is, you can't measure that. And I wouldn't trade that for the world. My own personal experience, my father was a Vietnam vet, Rob, and I can remember I was 11 years old. I was about to become 12. It was 2 weeks before 2 months before my 12th birthday. And my mother told me, she said, well, you know what? I'm getting married, to this guy that she's dating. She's still married to him. And she told me she was getting married, and my response, gentlemen, was, oh, now that you're getting married, that means I'll have a father. And she said, well, just because I'm not married does not mean that you don't have a father. And she called my father on the telephone, and I talked to him, gosh, I want to say it was probably 15 or 20 minutes. And in the dialogue, this was on a Saturday, he agreed to come see me the following Saturday. So that Thursday night, his girlfriend stabbed him to death. So the first time I ever got to physically see my father was to view his body in the casket at the funeral. And this is my own personal experience of why I go so hard for my son. I think about being in Cub Scouts and projects we worked on, and there were fathers there that helped their sons. I wanted to be able to do that for my child. You think about if your child happens to get in a scuffle or a fight or something, you want to be able to be that father, to be supportive or be protective. I think about my experience, as you have conversations developing into young men and talking to young women. I want to be there to do that with my son. And so that is why I felt like I should have, want to be the primary caregiver, want to be the custody, person, not because of, what a court can say, because unfortunately, most of the time as an African-American male, as we both know in the judicial system, your chances of winning, man, you got a better chance of, skateboarding on some grass in Montana than you do winning in court as a Black. You go in with 2 strikes off the gate. 1, you're Black, 2, you're a male. So that last strike that you're fighting not to have against you is really hard. And what my son has been able to see is I laugh because we talk about it. He, no matter what it is, he'll say, to a teacher, well, if this is going to happen, let me tell my dad, or let me call my dad. Yesterday, I've kept every voice message my son as a child up till 7 has ever sent me. And the one, I tell you, this one right here just punches me in the gut. I might get a little dusty in here. He told me, he said, Dad, I love you. He said, I know I cry sometimes, but I know you'll never leave me. I know you'll come get me. I know my dad is going to be there. And my son will be 15 in 3 weeks, but that voice message from when he was 2 is still, I won't change carriers. I keep that up there because when I'm dealing with the devil, that I can go back, and that's my reason for being. And I encourage other Black fathers to find, that reason, that gem that you see the good in your child. It's going to be some days it's going to be pure hell. Trust me. As I'll say, like, in your mind, you're like, man, I want to choke this dude out. But in reality, you're working towards something beautiful. You're working towards something great. Find what's good in your son or your daughter that you can build upon so that those days that are just like I said, pure hell, where you're like, man, is this really the type of work you turn it in at school? Or, why do all these things that they can do? Like Robert was mentioning, I can even imagine telling my kid to go drink a beer, with a guy. One, I'd be thinking about ATL, underage, car. I'd be thinking of all the negatives. And I'm being real with it. I'm one of those kids, Stanley. I was scared to death of sex by my mother. I was one of these guys having sex as a kid because my mother was a social worker. She told me off gate, she said, if you happen to get in a situation where you're having a child, you're going to stop school, you're going to go to work, you're going to take care of that child because you will not be a sorry man. That's going to limit the rest of your life because you won't have those other opportunities. And that stayed with me because I was like, man, I don't want to have a sorry life and I don't want to do these things, that are pitfalls. So I was one of those guys, man, call it young lady might be kissing you, rubbing your cheek or whatever. Man, I'd floor that Toyota Corolla and get her home so quick.
Hey, man, look, I mean, so I think that one of the things, Scotty, like, especially sharing your experience, because I think that's the great thing about fatherhood too, but it's also the warning label for a lot of kids who may not have had it, is that we are taking experiences and our life experiences, and that's shaping us, and the lessons that we were taught and the expectations that were put upon us, right? So the experiences and the expectations, and that shapes who we are as fathers. I can remember my dad telling me, which is very similar to you as far as the custody of the kids. Like, it was a motivation beyond anything. It was my dad putting the expectation that bunches men stay with their families. Basically, bunches men raise their kids. I mean, that was the expectation that I always had. It was like, no, I mean, like, whatever happens with us, right? I'm a Funchess man. Like, I'll stay here as long as we need to stay here because this is what my expectation is. And I know that I mean, I'm sure a lot of therapists and people say that's not good. You don't stay throughout different things, but my dad put that ingrained in me that Funchess men stay with their kids. And that was
I'm gonna put this out there real quick, Stanley. As you mentioned that word, and it's for some Black men it's taboo, but I do believe years ago Michael Baisden back in '97 did a book called Black Men Cry in the Dark. I do believe that that's a topic we should, if you did, for our grandfathers, they were strong, or, your dad might have been a strong, silent type. They might not have, you never saw them cry. You didn't really, they held it all in. But unfortunately, that can tear you down. That can lead to, mental challenges, physical challenges as well. And then that impacts your child. Are you supportive? And I'm extremely supportive of Black families getting support, therapy or support. You use the word therapy. And of course, it could be through a licensed professional. It could be through a counselor. It could be through, in some cases, if it's secular pastoral, or through a masjid but whomever. But getting that, talking it out, that's important. And I think so many Black men struggle because they, man, I got this problem. I can't tell nobody I got this problem. I was in college, man, when I found out that the majority of domestic violence took place where there were women, and this is at the time, women were abusing men. Not because, and it was primarily because men did not want to report domestic violence. If a woman cut you or slapped you, cut your tires, smashed your window, you paid for it, or she, hit you, beat you up, whatever, wherever the foot, there were, and I was astounded by that. And I thought, man, if you got Black men or men that don't even want to say that they were abused, imagine the mental anguish that we go through that we don't seek help for.
Yeah. I think that's therapy is a cultural thing that has shifted over the last 5 to 10 years. I think more and more people are trying to look into that, and that will lead into other episodes that we're going to have on Dads and Dollars, because we are going to look at at that aspect of fatherhood and as well as partnering and parenting relationships. So I just, on that note, man, I want to thank you guys for joining us on Dads and Dollars. Robert, Scotty, look, it's great conversation. People got a peek into when we're sitting around the conference and we're sitting around the table, what we're talking about. I don't know if they're thinking about we're trying to overrun the country or whatever, but we're really just talking about, hey, real things, real men, real issues.
Right.
How can we be better? How can we be better value to our families, to the corporate entities that we try to bring value to? And I appreciate you guys sharing your time and joining us on Dads and Dollars today.
Anytime, man.
All right.
And Rob, real quick, man, I gotta ask this. Being a Brooklyn native, top 5.
Jay-Z,
okay.
Biggie,
okay.
Nas,
okay.
Rakim.
All right.
And last one, I have to go out and put what's his name? The one that passed away. He passed away real young, didn't get a real major deal.
Big L.
Big L, yep.
Man, look, okay. y'all, you ain't put not one Southern rapper in there, man. Look, man, that's so disrespectful.
Hard, man.
That's so disrespectful, man. Look, I'm not a big rap guy, but that's disrespectful, man. I mean, you didn't say 3 stacks. I mean, he hit Rob hit all the winners too for me, man.
Oh,
man, look, man, look. All right, we're gonna have to change this up then. All right, so top 5 basketball players all time because I mean,
it's Dr. J.
Man, get out of here, man. Man, you might well sit on down, man. Wow. We're going to go to Rob then. Go ahead.
Nah, Kobe, Jordan, Shaq.
Wait, you doing this in order?
No order. No order.
Okay.
No order. No order. No order. Kobe, Jordan, Shaq, Olajuwon, and give me. I'll put AI on that.
Man, you got Magic or Bird. Look, it's all generational there, man. Look, Scotty, you talking about Dr. J, man, you're gonna get away with that. But I mean, you got Mike, you got Kareem. Lou Alcindor was dominant. You got Kareem, you got Magic. I mean, you don't have the NBA without Magic and Bird. So I don't even care if anybody say anything. Without Magic and Bird, you don't even have the NBA. So I got to put both of them together. So that's 4.
And who was it? And who was Bird's nemesis?
And Bill Russell is 5.
Yeah, Bill Russell definitely.
Huh?
Dr. J was Larry Bird's nemesis.
Was he? I always thought it was Magic.
No, man. I mean, look, they were in the East together, and they had some battles, but Dr. J wasn't the same. I mean, he was later in his career. He wasn't. He was later in his career at that time. You didn't get the 1976, 77 version of Julius Erving.
Right.
You got the older version.
Man. When we grew up as kids, we'd run to the basketball goal, take the ball, wouldn't be anywhere near the goal, jump up and yell out, Dr. J, and then I can that's some of my childhood memories. Or when you stand about 20 feet away from the goal, and like you said, you get ready to shoot, and you take your arm out, Scott, look, Kareem. And you're like, man.
Oh, yeah.
Scott, look, that was it.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, man.
And thank you all for joining Dads and Dollars. Please rate us and review us. Give us 5 stars. If you give us anything less than 5 stars, then I guess you're going to be a Dr. J lover or somebody who who won't put a Southern rapper on your list or West Coast rapper either.
I got to agree with Stanley
on there. So
I got to agree with him because I always go with Outkast.
but yeah. But thank you for joining us on Dads and Dollars. We'll see you next time.
All right.
Okay, guys.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Dads and Dollars. If you found the information shared today valuable, please share with your friends and family via your social media. If you have a request for a future financial topic for Dads and Dollars, please email us at ask@dadsanddollars.com. For further information on your financial journey, you may purchase The Quest for Financial Independence, 10 areas of your financial planning you should not ignore, by visiting our website, dadsanddollars.com. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Individual tax and legal matters should be discussed with your tax or legal professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance reference is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Traditional IRA account owners have considerations to make before performing a Roth IRA conversion. These primarily include income tax consequences on the converted amount in the year of conversion, withdrawal limitations from a Roth IRA, and income limitations for future contributions to a Roth IRA. In addition, if you are required to make a required minimum distribution, RMD, in the year you convert, you must do so before converting to a Roth IRA. Asset allocation does not ensure a profit or protect against a loss. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of these strategies. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Guests and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Intellis Advisory Group. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC. Advisory services offered through Intellis Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Intellis Advisory Group and Intellis Wealth Management are separate entities from LPL Financial.